Let's get started for the effective savings rate, the ultimate rate optimization metric with Erik and Erik. Give them a big round of applause.
All right. Thank you. We are the Eriks.
Yes, we're the Eriks.
One with a K, one with a C.
Both went to Virginia Tech.
Yeah. Quick introduction, 30 seconds. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer of ProsperOps. A little bit about ProsperOps. We think FinOps is hard. We think FinOps is really hard, and it's complex. And in order to consistently achieve world-class optimization outcomes, it really requires automation. As talented as you all are, the cloud has just become so complex that it requires automation. And so we deliver automated savings outcomes. We use automation, AI, real-time telemetry to automate FinOps activities on your behalf. If we do our job right, we effectively write you a check every single month. We are not a visibility or reporting tool. We manage over $1 billion of annual compute. That's just compute, not considering other spend. And we do it for some of AWS's largest and most sophisticated customers, one of which is Boomi.
Hi. So speaking of automation, Boomi, we integrate your business, your people, your technology, your data together in an automated fashion. So quite frankly, you don't have to spend all this time and effort managing your own integrations, your own middleware. You can use us as a service to achieve those goals and save some money and make yourselves more efficient.
And what's your role?
My role is the FinOps lead at Boomi. I've been doing this for about 4 years now for Boomi.
And JR mentioned the OG group at the
OG
beginning.
group.
You were in that OG group, right?
Very close to it.
Yeah.
About April of 2019, I think it was.
Erik's one of the OGs. Yeah. Amazingly connected. If you know anything about FinOps, come talk to Erik. He knows like everybody and everything about FinOps, so it's fun to talk to him. Okay, quick question. A little bit of audience participation. Who here runs on AWS? Raise your hand. Okay, cool. We're going to talk about effective savings rate today. That is a metric that will apply to all clouds, but just to make it very practical, we're going to focus on AWS. And we want to give you a lot of practical information today. So starting off with a little bit of trivia, just to make sure everybody is sort of awake, paying attention. This is the AWS marketing page for savings plans, where they say you can save up to 72%. Question for the group: who knows which compute resource you have to run to get a 72% discount? If anyone knows the answer, I'll give you a $100 gift card, and I will buy you a pair of these cool light-up shoes. I don't know which is more motivating, but I'll give you both if anyone knows the answer to this. Yes? Say it again. It is EC2, but which EC2 instance?
X1 or X2.
It is not X1 or X2. Yes? No.
We got
Say it again. A1, no. I know. Lest we go through the entire alphabet, I'll just tell you the answer. It's not what you would expect. It is the D2 8 extra large running Windows, shared tenancy in US East 1, East 2, or West 2. It actually gets a 73% discount. So if there's anyone in AWS marketing in the audience, you're missing the opportunity to claim one extra percentage point discount on your marketing website. So D2 8 extra large. Next question: who here that is running on AWS is running a D2 8 extra large Windows in one of those three regions? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, I don't see any hands. So the question is, if you run that, you can get a 72% discount. That is not untrue marketing. That is correct. But the question is, for everyone else that's not running D2 8 extra large, what are you actually saving? What is your discount? Is it 15%, 20%, 50%, 29%? Whatever it is. Next question, whatever that number is that good or is that bad? Like, how does that compare to, others in the industry, et cetera? So these are the questions that we want to answer today. Okay, a bit more context. If you've read the FinOps, which I highly recommend, there's two types of optimization. There's usage optimization, which is basically about using less stuff, right? Right-sizing instances, right-sizing storage, deleting unassociated IP addresses, all those sorts of things. You're going to use less stuff. The flip side of the coin is rate optimization, which means for the stuff that you use, you want to get the best price that you can get for it. And so today we're going to focus on the left-hand side, which is rate optimization. This is the world of RIs and savings plans, CUDs and FCUDs if you're in Google. And so ESR is the ultimate rate optimization metric that comes from this taxonomy right here. Question, who loves to have waste in their cloud spend?
Oh, sorry.
Just kidding.
Just kidding.
No one loves to have waste in their cloud spend. Conversely, when you optimize your cloud spend, doesn't it just feel good to know that your usage, your spend is optimized? There's something visceral in me that hates waste. Mm-hmm. And so what we want to talk about in this domain of rate optimization is what metrics can we use to ensure that our rate optimization efforts are worthwhile, that we're doing a good job, right? What metrics can we reliably use to measure that and to know that our efforts are resulting in great outcomes? And so we're going to look at traditional rate optimization metrics, what the FinOps is ESR. Erik's going to talk a bit about ESR at Boomi. We're going to talk a little about ESR and focus, and then we're going to talk about how to calculate ESR on AWS. So that's an aggressive agenda, so let's buckle up and get to it. So if you are familiar with RIs and savings plans, there's generally two types of metrics that you will look at. One is coverage, one is utilization. So the question is, can we rely upon coverage as a metric that we always optimize for that will result in the lowest cost, i.e. the most savings? And so in this example here, just to orient you, you can see those purple boxes. These are EC2 instances, and you've got environment A and an environment B. They're identical in that they each have 4 instances. What varies is the number of RIs that you have, which are those light gray boxes. And coverage is looking from the purple boxes up. So the question is, how many in environment A of the 4 purple boxes have a corresponding RI? 3 of 4, so your coverage for environment A is 75%. If you look at environment B, you have all 4 purple bars have a corresponding RI, so your coverage is 100%. So the question is, if we're going to use coverage as a metric to optimize, you would want to pick the outcome that has the higher coverage. But in this scenario, if you actually calculate the cost of this, the environment A, which has a lower coverage, actually has a lower cost, i.e. more savings. It's more optimized. So this is a simple example of where you actually want to choose the environment that has lower coverage to have a greater savings outcome, have a lower cost. So coverage is a challenge. What about utilization? So utilization is basically looking at this instead of bottoms up from dark purple to gray, look at it from top down. So of the RIs that you have deployed, how many of them are actually matching EC2 instances? And in this case, in environment A, you've got 6 RIs and you have 5 EC2 instances. So of the RIs you've deployed, 5 of 6 are utilized, and so your utilization rate is 83.3%. In environment B, you only have 1 that is 100% utilized, and so your utilization is 100%. So again, if we look at the cost of each of these environments, again, it turns out that the environment with the lower utilization actually has the lower cost. And this is sort of counterintuitive in many ways, but these are examples, very, very simple examples. There can be more complex examples of where you cannot reliably use either utilization or coverage as something that you want to optimize for that will always guarantee an optimal savings outcome. Now, the astute person may say, Erik, well, you have to use them together. You can't look at them independently, you have to use them together. So let's look at an example. This is actually a real customer of ours. This is their workload pattern. You can see it's very cyclical. And what many people will do when they see a pattern like this is they will cover with commitments up to the trough. And if you did that in this example, your coverage would be 49.2% and your utilization 100%. And so the question is, most people sort of intuitively understand that if you raise your coverage higher into the cycle, you actually drive your savings higher. The question is, where is that optimal point? Is it 60% coverage and 90% utilization? Is it 70% coverage and 80% utilization? You can't know the answer if you're just using coverage and utilization. You can't answer that question. And so again, what mix of these will actually maximize savings? You don't really know the answer if you're just trying to use these together. Again, the astute person may say, well, I would just pick the option that generates the most dollar savings, right? So if we look at dollar savings as a potential metric, let's look at this example here where we're looking at a trailing 6-month view. And this is the dollars that you've saved from your RI and savings plan efforts. You've managed a portfolio of these and generated savings. You can see that over the course of 6 months, you've actually had a 30% increase in your savings. That's great. But can you rely on that as a useful metric? Well, let's just say if we align that with your actual usage, like how much stuff you used, your compute usage actually increased 65%, but your dollar savings only increased 30%. So while your dollar savings increased, your savings power is actually decreasing. And so dollar savings is not a good, reliable metric because of that fact. When you talk about benchmarking, it's also a very poor benchmark because most companies don't want to share what their dollar savings is. And even if you did, it's not useful to compare because Netflix's dollar savings or Capital One's dollar savings is going to be very different potentially than yours. So it's not really a great metric to benchmark. So these are some of the downsides of traditional metrics. Let's talk about effective savings rate and how it solves these problems. So ESR, as we call it, is a very simple metric and concept. It is what did you save over what would you have spent if you ran an environment entirely on demand. So just to give you a simple example, let's say you go to Walmart and you buy a candy bar for $1 and you get a discount, so you only pay 50 cents. Right? So you save 50 cents, you would have paid $1, your effective savings rate is 50 cents. Let's say you go and buy 2 candy bars. The first one you pay 50 cents, the second one you get a discount and you pay 75 cents. So you've saved 50 cents and 25 cents. You've saved 75 cents over $2. Your effective savings rate is now 37.5%. Now multiply that times 10, 20, 50, 1,000. Each of those is now a compute instance or some compute resource with RIs and savings plans. And if you do all the math to figure that out, you can figure out at the end of the day, when all is said and done, with coverage, utilization, discount rates, what did you actually save off the on-demand rate? It's an incredibly powerful metric to understand the efficacy of your rate optimization efforts. So let's come back to these examples we looked at before and look at ESR. You can see in that table I've added ESR to the bottom there. And so again, ESR of environment A, 20.9%. ESR of environment B, minus 8.2%. If it wasn't obvious to you before, you actually have a negative ESR, i.e. you would have been better off in environment B having no RIs at all than actually running that RI portfolio. You actually are losing money. ESR makes it available. It makes it very easy to know which of the two options leads to a higher savings outcome. So always choose the highest ESR. I always say ESR is the truth teller. It will never lead you astray. Let's look at utilization. Same exact concept, environment A, higher ESR than environment B, even though the utilization percentage in environment B is higher than environment A. Again, ESR is the truth teller. Let's look at this cyclical example. Remember before, the red line was at the trough. If we actually calculate the optimal point for this cyclical workload, it's where this red line is now. How do you know that? Well, you can use ESR to figure it out. So before it was 49.2 and 100%. It turns out the optimal point is about 88% coverage and about 86% utilization for an ESR of 37%. The way you can do that is on this chart here on the x-axis, I have the coverage. So how high you want to raise your coverage, and on the y-axis is the ESR. And the leftmost red line is the trough, so that's where we started. And then you just increase the coverage moving right. And you can see the ESR curve there goes up, peaks, and then begins to decline. And so what you can do is just find the peak, the highest point on that ESR curve, and that is your optimal coverage point. And it turns out your ESR is 37%. And just to make this real, I did mention this was a real customer of ours. If you cover at the optimal point versus the trough, in this specific case, it equated to about $374,000 a year of incremental annual savings. And so another way to calibrate ESR, let's just say you spend $1 million a month on compute, just to make the math pretty easy. If you increase your ESR by 1%, that's about $10,000 a month or $120,000 a year. So if you can measure ESR and you can work to improve it, 1%, $120,000 a year, 2%, almost $50,000 a year. And so moving your ESR needle just a couple percentage points can actually have a material impact on your savings. Okay, remember this example here of the savings increased 30%, but your usage was actually going up greater than that. If we plot ESR, you again see that ESR declines, which is sort of what you would expect. Your savings power is decreasing. So again, ESR is the truth teller. It reveals what's happening in these environments. And lastly, benchmarking ESR. And so the cool thing about ESR is that you can measure it and then compare it across different environments. And so on the bottom left there, just to orient you to this chart, what you're seeing here is you're seeing monthly spend on the x-axis and ESR on the y-axis. And this goes out to tens of billions of dollars a month, but it makes the chart hard to read, so I've just truncated it. But what you're seeing here is in the lower left corner, you actually have negative ESR. I mentioned that. So there are customers we've seen that have negative ESRs. The customers that are on the x-axis are doing nothing. So their ESR is 0. You've kind of got that sweet spot in the middle in yellow, and then you've kind of got that green line as sort of the 98th percentile point. And so if you look at these numbers, you can actually see now what are people achieving in terms of effective savings rates within AWS. And what's interesting is that the 60th percentile is still 0, which means there's a lot of improvement to be made. The way I think about this is if you're getting an ESR of 20%, you're about a B. You're in the 80th percentile. If you're getting an ESR of 30%, you're in the A range. And then A plus is really above 40%. If you can be above 40%, you're in like the 97th, 98th percentile. Correlating this with the State of FinOps survey that came out recently, what this is a chart of the various capabilities sorted by run descending. So everyone that said they were running in this area in a descending fashion, and managing commitment-based discounts was actually towards the end on the right. And so what's interesting is that this data correlates very well with that. What's cool, though, about ESR is I think you can quantify it a bit more. What does it mean to crawl? What does it mean to walk? What does it mean to run? We now have all this data. We can measure ESR, and we can know what it means to sort of crawl, walk, and run. Okay, with that, let me hand it over to Erik. That is ESR. Let me hand it over to Erik just to talk about ESR at Boomi and in the real world.
Who knows their ESR? That's awesome. We have one person in here that knows their ESR besides me. 2. Oh, sorry, I missed you. All right, 3. So the more we can share with each other, the more we can find out if we as an industry are all in a good direction, a bad direction, so on and so forth. But knowing, right, visibility, that's the first step. Let's talk about my journey. This is me, about a year and a half ago, hacking away, buying savings plans, laddering savings plans, buying 3 years, 1 year, so on and so forth, right? Spending a bunch of hours doing so. Well, I still had no idea, what the ESR was, and in fact, my first conversation with Erik was, hey, here's something that is an industry-based metric. It can provide you and guide you in terms of how well you are doing as a company in managing your rate commitments. So what was my ESR when I started back a year and a half ago? So that got me to, all right, a 26.4%. So I believe that's a B, right, or a B plus, according to the data that ProsperOps has. So I was doing a relatively effective job. However, I could probably be doing better. Enter ProsperOps. So we had the conversation, and we are a ProsperOps client. I now knew what percentage I was at. And now I also knew what opportunity I had. And this gives me the ability to say, hey, on my Boomi plan on a page, a BPOP, as we call it at Boomi, I am going to commit to a 34% effective savings rate this year. So what are the results? Remember that old metric of coverage, right? I typically kept a 80% coverage with 100% utilization. But as Erik showed before, we have some ups and some downs, so I clearly was leaving potential out there. So that coverage immediately from ProsperOps, thank you, boosted up to 95%. But again, that doesn't tell the story. What about the ESR? So 26.4%. My hard-earned work is leading to a 26.4%. Entering the tool, we boosted to 35.3%. That's a 33% increase. And actually today I looked, we're 35.5. Next month we'll probably be in the 36s with monthly all upfront, rolling monthly all upfront, excuse me. So me, right, hacking away. I was now replaced with ProsperBot in a good way, right? ProsperBot was now able to manage my commitments. I took my hands off the keyboard. The tool is now doing the job for me in an automatic perspective. And oh, by the way, who here was asked to reduce spend and optimize this year? Anybody? Do more. All right, look at all this. We were asked to decrease our spend substantially. We dropped our usage by 10 to 15% on compute. And you know what? The tool followed me all the way down with no waste. That's pretty impressive.
Hey, one more question. We were talking the other day about this idea of benchmarking. And you were telling me a story about, I think it was your chief accounting officer.
Yes.
Can you maybe tell the audience that story a little bit, just about
Sure thing.
The importance of benchmarking?
Okay, so chief accounting officer comes to me, brand new, and I'm gonna impress her, right? I'm gonna show her all these FinOps metrics, I'm gonna show her how much money we're saving. And as I start presenting this data, she immediately disarms me and said, is that good or is that bad? I honestly could not answer that question because I really wasn't sure until I understood what the ESR was and how it was comparing to the industry. That's what you wanted to see. If we're 35%, we're in the A range. We're doing well. And yes, we run a lot of Red Hat Linux, so that kind of limits our potential anyways in the first place. It's more expensive than just AWS Linux. So my point is, if you have the data, we can all help each other understand how we are doing from a rate optimization perspective, and we can all get the most value out of every dollar that we are spending in the cloud.
Cool. Okay, a couple more things. One is talking about ESR and the FinOps Foundation. This metric was created by ProsperOps, but there's nothing magical about it, right? You guys saw the formula. It's just savings over what you would have otherwise spent. It can be complex in actually gathering the data to calculate ESR, but the concept of ESR is very, very simple. We created it because our mission, as Erik just kind of illustrated, is to algorithmically and automatically manage these commitments on your behalf to drive your ESR as high as possible. We needed a way to measure that. If we're going to tweak our algorithms, did it improve things or make things worse? We need a way to measure that. And ESR was born out of that, but there's nothing magical about ESR. And in fact, what we found is that many people that learn about ESR, even if they're not a ProsperOps customer, really like it. They want to measure it. They want to understand where they fit in. And so we are in the process of contributing effective savings rate to the FinOps Foundation to become a standard KPI. And so whether you're a ProsperOps customer or not, doesn't matter. ESR is valuable. Everyone should know their ESR. Everyone should be able to measure their ESR and know how they fit in. Along those lines, there's now an ESR working group that started. We would love for anyone who wants to learn more about ESR and participate to get involved. This QR code goes to the FinOps Foundation website where you can sign up. You just check the ESR box and say, I want to get involved in the working group. We'd love to have you involved to participate in that process of having ESR become a standard KPI. And the last piece has to do with focus and ESR. And is Udam in here? Would you mind coming up for just a sec? You have 2 minutes. But this idea of ESR is one where I'm going to show you in just a second how you can calculate ESR in AWS, but I have to do it again for Google and again for Azure versus focus. So would you take a minute and just talk about, last session you talked about focus, but how does that help when it comes to standard KPIs, like ESR or any other standard KPIs?
Yeah, definitely. Two things I'd say. We definitely want to work backwards from practitioner needs and use cases and build those things into focus and enable those calculating those things using a standard set of instructions. I mentioned that earlier. This is definitely one of those things that we're looking to enable. So look out for some of the upcoming releases where we'll provide the underlying data that's needed to do this in a consistent way across whichever vendor you might be using.
Cool. And you think this is going to be in the 1.0 spec?
We hope so. We want to get folks interested, and ultimately the practitioners are driving the 1.0 scope. So yeah, if you all find this useful, let's get involved and drive that into the spec.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Udam.
Thank you.
Again, being able to calculate ESR one time on the focus standard, and whether it's coming from whatever cloud provider, it doesn't matter. This is sort of another example of the promise of focus. Okay, in the last few minutes I have left, I've recorded a video that walks you through how you can calculate your own ESR on AWS. And so, let's see if you can make that full screen. Excellent. Okay, so first thing you do is you go to effectivesavingsrate.com. This is a very basic microsite we set up. And there you can see that link to calculate your ESR. There's a public Google sheet that you have access to. There's also links to blog posts we've written. If you want to learn more about ESR, you can do that. By default, you don't have read access, so you want to make a copy of the public Google sheet. And once you do that, you're going to see there's just a few steps you need to do. The first is you want to pick the time period over which to measure ESR. So in this example, I'm just changing it to look at the month of May. So it's going to be 5/1 to 6/1. And there's a series of pre-configured CLI commands right there that you can execute. And so all you have to do is copy that command and paste it into the terminal. And we're actually going to use an anonymized ProsperOps customer here. So I'm adding that profile to the end. You normally wouldn't do that unless you have multiple profiles set up. And it's going to filter everything down to specific values. And so you just copy those, and you'll paste them in the corresponding places in the Google Sheet. Thank you, AWS, for 9 decimal places of precision. So we're starting off with some savings plans information. And we're going to paste that in. Next, we're going to go get some RI information. So copy that, paste it. Again, I'm just going to add the profile command, which is going to target a specific customer virus. Again, the data is filtered. Just grab the information and paste it in the corresponding cell. And then one final command we're going to add after this is to pull the on-demand information. We now have savings plan and RI data. We're pulling the various components that you need to measure ESR. So we're going to get the last component here, which is on-demand spend. Step 4, after we paste this in, is the cost to achieve the savings outcome, if any. So while RIs and savings plans deliver savings, there's often a cost associated with that. In this case, I've just assumed it's $1,000. Whatever it is, you enter it in, and you can see the ESR there is calculated 47.1%. And so if you want to know what your ESR is, follow these steps, and you can figure it out. So 30 seconds left. I think that's about it.
Can everyone connect with you?
Yeah, if you could hit escape over there, please, just to get back to full screen. Or go to the next slide. Can you go to the next slide?
Almost. Boom.
So ProsperOps has a booth over here. We'd love to talk to you. We're also hosting a party tonight. which is at the same place that the welcome reception was last night. We're going to have retro video games, DJ, food, drinks. It's going to be awesome, so I'd love for you to come hang out with us there. Eric, where can they meet with you?
Actually, you could scan my QR code and connect with me on LinkedIn. Or find me in the Slack.
All right.
Or on the field. Anywhere.
Applause for the Erics. Thank you.
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.